What can I do? 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 Anybody able to people on YouTube and say, um, let me just tell everyone on YouTube to see if it's working. Apologies, this is not the opening. Have we gone live now? That's it. It's worked at last. It's worked. It's kicked in at last. Sorry, everybody. There was a bit of a panic going on there. I can see from here I've gone live, but nobody was on seeing me on YouTube. So apologies to everybody for that. Welcome back to another live show here from the Veg Grower Podcast Podding Shed. Hope you are all well and had a great week. It's been another eventful week, hasn't it, with the storm and everything going through. So what we're going to be talking about today is I'm going to ask you guys to help me plan my front garden. I've got a few pictures and I want to make it more edible, more of a garden that from the outset, it's got to serve a couple of purposes, being suitable for parking our vehicle, access for obviously ourselves to the front door, etc., but also I want to grow some edible plants in there, and that's what I'm really hoping to achieve. So get your thinking caps on. I'll show you a few pictures in just a moment, but first of all, let's see if anybody is out there. First of all, Ballycillian is out there. Good evening all. Good evening to you. Adrian is out there. Good evening to you. Oracle is out there. Hello, Army, and my good friend Stuart Jackson over on the other outlet. Good evening to you. Fireworks are going off. Turbo Stream, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Alison O'Brien, evening all. Good evening to you. Anna Jones, evening gardeners. Good evening to you. What else have we got? Hargrave Gas, evening all. Hope no one has been flooded this week. We've had terrible rain. I'll come to that in just a moment, actually. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard, and the Veg Army. Hope everyone is well and staying dry. Indeed, I hope you're all staying dry. Richard Golden, good evening to you. Lovely to see you. Facebook. This is Kate in the Facebook group. Good evening, Veg Army. Lovely to see you there. Anybody else who might be watching in the Facebook group, just let me know who you are by putting your name at the end of your message, just so I can address you personally. Turbo Stream says you've just popped up, so hopefully we are live on YouTube. It looks like it. What I see is Richard's front gardens looks nice to me. It's better than my front garden. I'll come to that in a moment. Yeah, Stuart Jackson is saying welcome to all on YouTube at last. We weren't sure what was going on there for a minute. Few can see you now. I thought I had broken something. I thought I had broken something as well. I can often see when something's not quite right, even though the art of going live is there's not much I can do once I hit that go live button. Rebecca in the Facebook group is also joining us. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Chili Kate saying hello to everybody. Chili Phil also saying hello. Digwell is out there. Don't panic, I'm here. Lisa from Not Just Green Fingers UK blog. Good evening all. Not keen on these dark evenings. Now, it was horrible coming out to the shed this evening. Horrible and dark. Andrew Norris has joined. We've got a lovely video coming up from him a little bit later on. Who else have we got? David Williams has joined. Good evening to you. Nicola has joined from Cornwall. David says it's windy in Porthcawl tonight. Hope I've pronounced that correctly. Caravans rocking. Up from McGill. Hello, Montreal is listening. Lovely to see you. Anne Wright has joined. Hello, Veg Growers. Nice to catch a live show. Good evening to you. I think that is all the comments caught up on. Lovely to see everybody out there, and thank you so much for joining us. So, as I said, I want your help to give me a few ideas and design my front garden, or plan how I'm going to do my front garden, and I'll go through what I want to do and a few of the situations that have arisen through a bit of research we've been doing over this last year. But first of all, this weather we've had last week, obviously lots of rain has come through and Storm Claudio. Has anybody Oh, excuse me, sorry. Has anybody, I had my dinner before we started, anybody suffered any major damage after Storm Claudio? Now, on on Thursday when the storm had passed, I thought we had got away with it, but I didn't look properly. I hadn't been down to the allotment until I drove past Friday morning on my way to work, and I had to drive past a few times because one of my greenhouses had disappeared. This was a new greenhouse. Luckily, it had just blown over, and we can fix it next weekend. No glass has been smashed, no glass has been lost or anything like that. We didn't put any glass in this new greenhouse. Grandad's greenhouse, a few panels had popped out, but they were quickly popped back in. So all well and good there. We also, just outside this shed, as you know, we've built the balcony garden, which is to represent somebody in a flat with their balcony. And I've noticed earlier today when I was out there, first chance I really had to get out there, is that the plants that were on the shelves have been blown off. So we've lost some radicchio. My bonsai apple tree had been blown off and smashed. The tree itself is okay, just the pot is broken. And a few other herbs in pots have also been blown off. Nothing too serious except for the radicchio, which seems to be lost. So overall, I think we got away with it from Storm Claudio pretty easily. So quickly back to the comments. Ernie has joined. Good evening to you. And Anna Costellas from Montreal is also listening. 2 people from Montreal. Hello to everybody in Canada. Idaho Garden Girl has joined. Hello, Richard, Adrian, Ernie, Ballycillian, and everybody else. So hello to you. Digwell Green Fingers, just a bit of blustery wind here for once. Lucky you. So Oracle said Stuart Jackson needed to join us on YouTube. He's like a breakaway wing. Well, to be fair, we used to go live on Facebook when we first started doing these live shows. We were only on Facebook. As time's gone on, we've added extra things and gone on to YouTube as well. So, yeah, he's sticking with the old method. Turbo Stream, I ventured down to the plot this week. It's very soggy, so didn't do anything. Disappointing to see my green salad leaves in my grow flame have all been eaten by slugs. How annoying. How annoying. But this wet weather, we are going to get quite a few slugs coming along. And Stuart Jackson says, I have my house roof replaced at the moment, so it's been a bit hairy this week, but still dry and sold inside. Lost a veggie pod lid at school, new one ordered, so will be fixed next week. Yeah, I know how you feel. I mean, we've been thinking about there's a lot of things going on in our house. So the roof, I would have been terrified without a roof this week. Phone line is open and hopefully it's working. 07307 135 174 if you do want to call in. So my front garden. Now, I've actually gone out there today to take a few photos just so I got a bit of an idea on what we can do with my front garden. And as I said, I want you guys to help me plan this makeover. So, first of all, this is the front of my house. As you can see, we've got 2 vehicles parked on the drive. And this is something I've got to say, primarily the front garden is for parking our vehicles. We have 3 vehicles in total. One will eventually go in the garage most of the time. I've got my camper van and my work van, which doesn't leave us with very much space at all. As you can see, it's a little bit tight, especially trying to maneuver the vehicles into all the different places. As you can see here, and this just goes to show how tight it can be in terms of space, and that's how we got to get past to get to the front door. So it can be very, very tight and limited on space. That being said, we do have this space right at the front along by the wall where the privet bushes are currently, and the first part is, of course, we're going to have to rip out these privet bushes. It's not easy to rip these out because this driveway has been built before we moved in. It's probably, I don't know, 20 years old or something. The ground underneath is incredibly hard. Being a very hard clay that we're on, it's been compacted over time. I've tried digging a couple out. It's going to be hard work and a lot of work just to get some of these bushes out to make more room. Now this area here, excuse the weeds, but this area here is an area where we do feel we can grow. In fact, I had grow bags on that shingles over this last year where we grew just some various things, which worked out quite nicely. But again, space can be the issue because of the fact that we have to get past all these vehicles. At the front of my Alfie, my camper car, we do have a couple of trees that I've pulled out to make us a bit more room, so we can pull them a little bit further forward to make a bit more room. So, and on the other side of the camper car, we've got this space here. Now, we do have a few various plants already growing nicely in there, including lavender and bay tree. So we know plants can grow, but this is just to give you an idea of the space. And this is primarily the privet bushes up front where we are going to be ripping out and growing most of our fruit trees and bushes, or whatever we might decide to grow at the front. This is a bay tree. As you can see, it's doing really well there. It was planted when we moved in. So we'll probably keep that bay tree where it is, along with the lavender, which also is great and does quite well. And then we've got this water butt as well, which I put in when we first moved in. We use that for washing the car mostly, but it's also the idea being that we can use that for watering our plants out the front as well. So over to get you guys to share with me your thoughts on what we could do. I'll come into what I've learned over this last year in just a moment to add some flesh to the bones. First of all, in the comments, Lisa is saying, didn't know there was a storm. Hardly any wind this week in Leicester, but it has been damp. You were very lucky then. We've had worse storms, but it was a pleasant storm this week, to say the least. David says, wish you hadn't mentioned that, Rich. Not been to the plot for 2 weeks. I hope the new greenhouse is still standing. You've got to remember, I'm on a very blowy site, so everything has to be bolted down to the ground as best as it can at the best of times. So my problem is I hadn't quite finished building the greenhouse and I didn't quite bolt everything down on that. That's the only reason. Granddad's greenhouse, the original greenhouse, stood there fine, no problems. So yeah, it's not that bad. Turbo Stream. I braved the garden centre this week too. Hard to see the garden stuff for all the tinsel and associated tat. That annoys me. Everybody knows I get annoyed with garden centres at this time because of the Christmas tat. But that being said, they've got to keep their employees employed over the winter, and that seems to be the way they're able to do it. Digwell says to Stuart, Veggie Pod, either put a short bungee cord on each corner, hook them to the top of the frame legs, or same sort of thing with a nylon string. I put a bungee cord right the way over the top of my Veggie Pod and my wormeries just to hold the lids on, just because it makes all the difference. Kate says, we went to the plot yesterday and moved the inherited blackcurrant bushes. Hard work as they had huge roots. Also broke my fork doing it and went face first into bushes. I'm all about the elegance. I nearly stopped myself from laughing, so I'm glad you had a bit of a chuckle about it as well. We've all done it, though. We've all done it. Fallen face first into bushes, trying to dig things out. I think I saw your picture of your fork that broke, and you can actually buy, it was just a handle from what I remember, it came off. You can actually replace the handle on its own. So it's not a complete loss. Not a complete loss. Stuart Jackson says, I would put all the pots on wheels, then you will be able to move everything around the front garden. That's a good idea, actually. Very good idea. That does bring me on to something that I should mention before we get too stuck into the planning. So we are planning to completely redo our driveway in the next 2-3 years. So everything that we're going to be planting out really needs to be in pots so it can be moved back and forth when we do the driveway completely. Obviously, the best thing to do would be to sort the driveway out before we start planting stuff up. But realistically, that can't happen. So we want to plant stuff first, then we'll do the driveway and work with it. Olko says this is looking like a garden SOS show. Well, we'll have. It kind of is in some ways. I just want to get your ideas and think about what we could do. Ernie says, how about plenty of pampas grass along the wall? So pampas grass, I believe, can get really, really big. Isn't it also a sign that you're a swinger or something? I've heard through the grapevine. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But remember, I'm all about the edible gardening. So unless it's edible, I don't really want to grow it. Andrew says, I agree with Ernie. Ornamental grasses, well, they will look great when the wind blows. It's not a bad idea. I'm more edible gardening, but if you can persuade me with ornamental grasses. Stuart says, sorry, I meant to say thank you for this month's seeds, not a problem. And Lisa also says, which way does the garden face? Do you get full sun? Now, that is a good question, actually. It actually faces to the west. So we get the sunlight in the evening or late afternoon, evening, I would say. It makes its way around. There is a house opposite, so when the sun's really low, it doesn't get very much light at all. So um, it's not full sun. I would class it as partial sun, but it is surprising just what grows out there. Corsican mint in between the paving stones. Smells amazing and can be stood on without any issue. This is one used for creme de menthe. Looks great in pots for a feature around broken terracotta. Corsican mint. Let's make a note of that. That's definitely one I like the idea of, especially if we can plant it in the paving slabs as a bit of a difference. Ernie says the pampas grass may hide the vehicles, and Idaho says pampas grass gets huge and is invasive. I know it gets huge. We have I know places where it used to grow a lot, so I completely agree. For me, I'm not quite sold on the pampas grass just yet, but I'll worry about that at a later date. I would be worried about wandering hands along the front wall pinching things. The side wall would be an obvious starting point for a few big containers. So this is again something that I have been thinking about when it comes to this project as well. Theft and security. The great thing at the moment is like nobody can break into our cars or our vehicles or anything because of the fact that it is quite a tight space. Um, and I like that. I also like the fact that we've got shingles because that works well with that. So wandering hands is definitely something I've been worried about and something my wife talked about a lot as well, even in our old place. And so we had a blackberry bush out there. Easy for somebody to pick that entire pot up and walk off with it. We do have a Ring doorbell, so we should catch it on camera, but that doesn't really stop it from happening. Now, Anne, right, espalier or cordon fruits trees along their sides. Yes, absolutely. So for those that don't know what espalier or cordon fruit trees are, they are trained to be almost fan trained up against the wall or to be quite small and take up very little room. A lot of pruning, a lot of work that goes into them, but it does work quite nicely. So, yes, I'm liking this idea. Oracle says it looks like an upper class area, Richard, so kids won't damage anything. Second, that you need to watch what you grow to keep the neighbours happy. I wouldn't say upper class at all. Um, we haven't had any thefts other than bits of scrap metal being taken from time to time. But again, it is a concern. It is a concern about kids or anybody saying that. Uh, um, and may hide the view of the neighbours. Well, that's funny enough, actually, because most of our other neighbours actually have everything open. The people who lived in here in this house before us fell out with a lot of our neighbours, and the stories we've heard are quite shocking. And that's why the privet bush, and there was another bush right in front of the front door that we did cut down. They were all put in to stop the neighbours looking in because of the arguments that were going on. So we get on fantastic with all our neighbours. We think it was the person who lived here first, from what we understand. But hiding the view from the neighbours is something to think about. at the same point, it's not a negative thing to have to be able to talk to your neighbours. This is a front garden after all. We want to socialise and talk to our neighbours as when we can. Strong wind just there. It started to panic me that something was about to burst through this wall. I think this is Rebecca. I think I'll put some raised beds in that you can cut them to fit your different spaces. They'll look nice and can mix your edibles with flowers to make potager. I'm liking this idea. Raised beds to shape. That's a very good idea. We could have almost like where I put Alfie in, we have to drive in at an angle. I could put a triangular raised bed in that. That I'm liking that idea very much so, very much so. And a potager, so a combination of flowers and edibles, all done to make it look attractive. Not a bad idea at all. Not a bad idea at all. What about raspberries along the wall? Parsley in pots, flowers to look pretty like calendula, but you can eat in salads. Rhubarb, step over apples. Oh, great ideas! Definitely great idea. In fact, the step over apples could work along that rear part of the drive as well. Raspberries, yeah, definitely. Raspberries do quite well in the shade, actually, so that might definitely be a good idea too. Liking this. Parsley in pots, yeah. I mean, we've got lots of parsley in our back garden as well, but yeah. Herbs generally just go anywhere. Loads of potatoes in buckets, Richard, especially after your allotment harvest. Yeah, my first earlies and my second earlies were good on the allotment, but my main crops were awful. But I do agree, potatoes in buckets is good idea. Good idea. Yeah, that's definitely one that we can put down on the list as well. Chili Phil says, we've had chilies, peppers and aubergines growing out the front this year in pots and no wandering hands. Been good to extend our growing space. That's what I want to do, is extend our growing space. And that's interesting that you've had no wandering hands out the front of your house. Chili, peppers and aubergines, all good things. And in fact, this might be a good point to share with you guys something that I've been thinking a bit more about doing in this front garden as well. Hanging baskets. Now, this year I grew a lot of chilies and peppers and aubergines in hanging baskets, and they did pretty well, actually. So I also think that out the front we could have more hanging baskets with these things in as well. Chili, and also under the front window boxes as well could go in quite nicely. So what do you guys think on those ideas? Idaho says, people have been climbing my fence and getting in my garden. I'm thinking I need to plant the thorniest bushes along the perimeter. Well, immediately when you think of thorniest bushes, especially if you're edible, I'm thinking of the dog rose, Rosa rugosa. Incredibly thick, thorny plants that it will cut you to shreds if you're somewhere where you shouldn't be. So that might be something you want to look at. Rosa rugosa, dog rose. I thought about that. The fruits do make a really delicious, what do they call them? Rose jelly or something, I think it's called. Absolutely delicious. Very healthy for you as well. And you get that security feature. Turbo Stream, I have a hedge on my front garden. I'm always picking out crisp packets and cans out of it. I definitely wouldn't want to eat anything from my front garden because of the fumes. It's a busy road. Now, this is something that did concern me, actually. We're not a busy road, but we do get passing traffic, and fumes and stuff does worry me, because I thought, when you put your vehicle or you drive your vehicle, you have four wheels either side. You've got a bit of space in between the wheels, which would be underneath the car. I'm not explaining this very well, but there's a place in Brighton near my office where they actually have planted up that central bit underneath the car with a load of plants. And that's something I did think about doing. Then I realized if I've got the work fan and oil or something comes out of the work fan from fridges and leaks over my edible plants, it puts me off slightly, but it's something to think about. Stuart says, along the road, grow gooseberries or sharp fruit, less chance of people taking them. That's not a bad idea at all. Not a bad idea. Grows gooseberries and sharp fruit. The type of fruits that, shall we say, are not top of people's list of priorities of what they want to get. Chili Fields says you should grow blackthorn, then you get slow blackthorn. That's a good one as well. Yes, blackthorn, that's sharp on those. Bally Silly, loads of hanging baskets with various herbs and edible flowers for colour. Yeah, I'm liking the hanging baskets. Definitely liking the hanging baskets. Stuart says, if your pots are very large, that will also stop people helping themselves. Good idea. I know Steve's Seaside Life, he used dustbins and filled those up with trees to stop people stealing them, which is a good idea as well. Very good idea. Oracle is asking Digwell if I was part of Digwell's Spud Challenge. I wasn't. I'll be honest, I don't get involved in many challenges because of time factors, but it's something we should be doing more. Turbo Stream says containers along the front house wall would work too, perhaps blueberries, etc. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got plenty of blueberries. I'm going to put that down again because we do like blueberries. We got how many plants now? 3 blueberry plants. They don't produce fantastically well, but I think we could do with more. Kate says, how about some gooseberry bushes? This was mentioned earlier. Can be trained into a nice shape and wandering hands will only ever try touching them once. Gooseberries is definitely, I'm putting that down as well, top of the list. Gooseberry seems to be a popular choice for stopping these wandering hands. Anything thorny, gooseberries, blackberries, that sort of thing. Rebecca is asking if she can come and help me plant it. You certainly can, Rebecca. Always happy to get some help, a helping hand, and we'll even point you up for the night or however long it takes as well. Digwell says, you've seen the front of my house. It puts a good life to shame. Never any theft or damage. Yes. Funny enough, Digwell, I've been watching your videos on this very subject and kind of what you're doing is what I would like to do. Our biggest trouble is our front garden isn't that big in the grand scheme of things. And we do have 3 vehicles in total. Our road isn't that big. So parking, we really want all our vehicles parked on our driveway or in our garage as well, where we can help it. But at the same point, I'm looking to try and expand or grow as much food as I possibly can in our garden as well. What else? Are you allowed to use your house to grow vertically as well? Rebecca says, yes. The only person I have to persuade is my wife to let me do a lot of these things. But vertical gardening is definitely something. All we got to do is be careful we don't block out the light for the neighbours. They're pretty good, our neighbours, though, to be fair. And I can always give them some extra vegetables to make up for it. Digwell says, as I was talking about oil leaking onto plants, I wash my veg before eating it. I always wash my vegetables as well. It's just a concern I did have. As you know, with the type of work like I do and the oils from the fridge compressors might leak out, is something I'm concerned about. Anne Wright says, quince japonica is both ornamental and an edible fruits that can be trained against fences and walls. I've never heard of quince japonica. I've heard of quince, but not japonica. So I will look into that. I like the idea of it and something definitely to add to this list. Stuart Jackson says crabapple would be good near the road, helps with pollination and no one would eat them twice. Okay, so I don't think you can see it in the picture I put up, but we've got a grass verge just in front of our house, just in front of the path. It belongs to the council, but in that grass verge is a cherry plum tree. Provides us with some delicious cherry plums. So we've got this little bonus extra thing there that we can also use. If it was up to me, that entire grass verge I would turn it into an edible planting system, but it's a council's property, so I can't do that. Oracle says, what is the budget, Richard? I don't really have a budget. I'm looking more for ideas and see what we can do. Um, as I said, it's more about it being the ideas and coming up with a plan that we can do. But good point, actually. I didn't even think about budget, partly because I never do, in all honesty. Turbo Stream says, I think a successful front garden needs a location that isn't passed by a lot of passing people. My house is en route from an estate to the Dole office. All sorts walk past my house. So here's my other thing that I have to say on that. Personally, because I have a decent sized back garden, got the allotment, and I'm actually growing growing plenty of food, shall we say. So if some people who perhaps are struggling help themselves to some food from my front of my garden, as long as they don't take everything, I don't mind too much, provided they genuinely need it and it isn't wasted. But that's very difficult to police. Digwell says blueberries yield better if cross-pollinated. That's why I've got 3 plants in my back garden to try and cross-pollinate them. Just never seem to do that great. Lisa, you can train gooseberries into espaliers so they are flatter against the wall. Espaliers, it's definitely training these plants. It's definitely becoming quite popular with you guys. So it's definitely something we're going to have to try and do. Ballycillian says the only trouble with using large containers is the weight of them, as you have to move them when getting driveway done. It is a good point. It is a good point. But what I would do then is a trolley sack so we can move them easily to our back garden. Be me, my wife, my brother to try and move them all in one go. But it is, yeah, with using large containers, it will be tricky. But I think if we can get them to a weight that we can just about lift them, will be enough to stop people from stealing them because of the effort involved. I mean, you never know. People will steal anything these days, don't you? Gooseberries, got it. Thank you, Kate Spratt. Oh, yes. Yeah. Digwell Green Fingers. I don't mind eating oil. It's the cow shit I worry about. I've just had deja vu there. I don't know if you've ever said that before, but I've just had deja vu about that. That's scary. Yeah. I'm not keen on the oil, not the fridge oil anyway. Ugh. My front drive is totally empty now, says Turbo Stream. I still look for my lovely camper van in the morning. I doubt stuffing pots would last 5 minutes before going Wilkies. I need to move house. Yeah, Turbo Stream used to have a beautiful camper van, which unfortunately kept getting broken into, and he had to give it up. But there again, if we can make this large enough, I'm thinking it. If I was you, Richard, I'd grow whatever you like. If people are stealing food, they're obviously in a poor situation. I do agree. I do agree with you there. Down on our allotment at the moment, we're having a lot of people have pumpkins and other various vegetables and fruit being stolen. And it could be people who are genuinely hungry and in need of food. But it's slightly off topic, but it is on par as well. But something that my local town actually has is a community fridge. And what a community fridge is it goes to supermarkets at the end of the day and collects food that they couldn't sell before it has to be disposed of. And then they actually give that away for a donation. Pretty much 5 days a week it's down there. My wife goes down there on a weekend, and she's had a whole chicken come back, donuts and yums and that sort of thing, as well as fruit and vegetables. So I do agree. I disagree with stealing, but at the same point, if people are hungry and I've got excess, I don't mind it. But then in my town, there are options to go and get extra food as well. Anna Jones, how about some half whiskey barrels with tumbling tomatoes and or herbs? Good idea. Yes, some half whiskey barrels or big pots like that. They're big enough that they won't get stolen. We can grow lots of food in them, tumbling tomatoes, herbs, lots of things. Yeah, definitely, Ren. Definitely a good idea as well. That's half whiskey barrels. Let's make a note of that. Barrels. So Anne says, how about an arbor over the vans? Grow peas and beans up it. Not a bad idea, the arbor. I'll be worried about blocking light off from our neighbours because that's a concern. And also manoeuvring the vehicles around to fit them in might be a bit tricky. But it's not a bad idea at the same point. Definitely saying I'm not sure on planning permission about height restrictions and things as well. But vertical gardening up against the wall of a house doesn't come into it, I believe. Chamomile in any cracks, so you can use it to make your own tea and you can walk all over it. So I have grown chamomile before and used it to make my own tea. And I'm not a tea drinker anyway, but it was disgusting, I found. I know it's meant to be really, really good, but I didn't like chamomile tea. Turbo Stream, isn't it awful that the main concern is theft? The downsides of big city life, I guess. I hate it sometimes. Unfortunately, theft is always going to be a problem, and it is one of the big downsides, but it is going to be a problem. Anna is asking if you are all paying for it. Nope. I'm paying for it myself. But Rebecca could be helping with the construction and everything as well. Oh, cool. People that sell stuff are doing it out of badness. Nothing else. The stuff that going missing on our site are people on the site because there's no way they could climb in. Yeah, I mean, theft on the allotment is part of allotment life. It is not great, but unfortunately it does mean that people, it's easy pickings at the end of the day. People are hungry, they're going to go to an allotment and steal carrots and things, although I'm sure most allotment holders would generally offer them to give them a food as well. So Rebecca says a seat. Yep, a seat to talk to the neighbours as well. Funny enough, part of the idea during that lockdown in 2020, you remember that thing that we went through? I think it was a Thursday morning. All our neighbours and us, we would just sit out the front with a seat and a cuppa and chat. It was a really lovely thing to do. We all got to know each other, and also gave us a chance to check on each other. If nobody was around, it was quite, we could raise the alarm, if you like. But having a seat, I think this is a thing where front garden, a bit like an allotment, the social side comes into it and you get to chat to more and more people. And I think that's very important. Don't forget the birds, Rebecca says. No, it's a good idea. No need to apologize. I love having long lists because it helps me out a lot with some ideas and gets everybody thinking. Bally Sunan says, along the front of my garden, a 12-inch wide row of slightly raised decking that I sat the pots on it and bolted them to the decking with a butterfly bolt under the deck. That's a good idea. Bolt the pots down onto the decking so they can't be stolen. That's a very good idea indeed. Bolt pots down. I'm going to make a note of that as well because I like these ideas. Right. Stuart Jackson says, if you build a raised bed, you could pot a seat into it. That's a good idea as well. I'm going to quickly take a moment because I've been sent a couple of videos this week. Which one is it? And the first one I want to share with you is, you may recall a few months ago, I said, why don't we start taking a photograph each week of our allotments and our plots to compile a look at how it's changed over the years? Well, Digwell has, of course, sent us a video of that very same thing from one of his plots. Let's have a look at this. and do it all again next year. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that video, Digwell. Just going to ask, was that music from the YouTube library or something like that? Just to, otherwise I might get a copyright strike. Just sudden thought. And funny enough, last week we were talking about Halloween and I talked about these things suddenly closing themselves. Happened while that video was playing. It just suddenly dropped while I was there. So what we got, Stuart Jackson has popped over to YouTube to see if it was any different to Facebook. Is it any different? Idaho says that's a nice allotment progression. Absolutely. It's what I want to see is this sort of thing. Oracle says, welcome, Stu. You only need to swan in now. Sean O'Brien says he likes the music. It was good music. I did like it. Andrew Norris says that garden looks so well managed regardless of a month. Great to see. Absolutely. Absolutely. Digwell works his socks off maintaining his gardens. Love the video from Lisa, and Digwell says, yes, well, YouTube library. Thank God for that. That means I'm not going to get any copyright strikes. I just suddenly thought of that while that was playing. You know how bad that can be. Not that I've got monetization on yet, but they can still get a bit funny about that sort of thing. Alison O'Brien also says, lovely looking garden. Indeed. Yeah, lovely looking garden. Fantastic. If anybody else has been doing the same sort of thing, please do pass it on to me and we can play it in another week. And hopefully next year we can all be doing that sort of thing to try and build up an idea of what's going on. I think it's a great idea to see the progression through the year. Now, at this point, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't done so yet, please do give us a like, please do give us a thumbs up, please do give us whatever, a follow, subscribe, whatever you may be on, and don't forget to get notified every time we go live. Turbo Stream says we'll be doing a similar thing for December for my photos this year. We'll use music from the YouTube copyright free section too. Fantastic. Yeah. That would be very, very useful just to make sure that they don't give me any strikes. Because we know how difficult YouTube can be when you get strikes sometimes. I have got another video to share with you all the way from Croatia, which is from Andrew Norris, which I'll share a little bit later on. I can't believe how quickly tonight has gone as we've been discussing this very, very topic. Now, something I had an idea of doing in this front garden is that bit to the left of our front of our garden, to the left of my work van in those photos, where I said I grew grow bags. That's also where we keep our bins, and it's handy there because the dustman can come along and just get them out without too much trouble. But I'm thinking of building around the dustbins some sort of dustbin enclosure with an edible roof. Has anybody done anything like that in their front garden, or any ideas of that? I love anybody. I've seen quite a few people do these sort of bin shed edible roof, or green roof as they might call them. But I don't know if any of you guys has done it. Chili Kate says, I'm looking forward to making a montage once we finish the plot next year. Finish in brackets. You never really do finish a plot, do you? It's always an ongoing project. This is where I've been talking about this front garden being a project. I was thinking about this the other day because I was on a big project at work this week, and I was sort of thinking about project planning. Not that I do much project planning, but when it comes to the garden, it's always like, right, I've got an idea of what I want to do. We'll throw this in, but then it's always fluid and adjustable as we go along. I interviewed somebody once, and he, when he was building his allotment, he actually had time frames for everything he wanted doing and working things out like that. And I thought about doing that with this front garden, but now I'm a bit like, talking to you guys particularly, I don't really want to. You've given me so many good ideas already. The first thing I've got to do, quite clearly, is get out all of those privet bushes and those bushes that we don't really want, and that's going to be my winter project. Anne is saying I have plot envy. Yeah, I mean, we all do. whenever we look at anybody else's plots, I feel we always do have plot envy. I certainly do anyway, because there's always so many more things that we could do, or different ideas that I end up just thinking this is what we could do. If you want to call in, the phone number is 07307 135 174. If you want to zap in, I've just put the link up in the comments should you want to zap in. Turbo Stream says, blimey, the dustbin take your bin from the front drive. Fat chance of that in Birmingham. I play Hunt My Bin every Tuesday morning after they have been. Yeah, they're not meant to, but our dustbin men are very, very good here. So they do take it from the front drive. We do keep it right at the front for them, so it's easy. They also, I mean, they get a Christmas bonus every year because of it, but I remember at our old house, we had the same sort of thing. We had to hunt the bins because they just dumped them back. I hope nobody out there works on the dustbins with what I'm about to say, but right throughout the year in our old house, they would collect the bins and just dump them all for the entire street in one big pile, except during December. Funny enough, during December, every bin got put back at the house that they were coming from. Always always makes me laugh when I think back to that. Rebecca says, Plot Envy is still fighting the council to get an allotment. They are currently going with ignoring me. Keep on it. Keep on it. Talking, this reminds me of something I have on my list of things, talking points. On Tuesday, my council is having a meeting, and I'm going to pop down there. Allotments is on the agenda because they are looking to pot our plot rental up for 20% each year for 5 years. So it will end up being 100% more. Basically, because the cost of the upkeep is far outstripping the cost of what they get in from the rent. And they're having a meeting about it. They're also talking about stopping poultry keeping on the allotments, which is something I'm going to argue against. But the rent prices, I've sort of looked at it. We pay £80 at the moment, and it's going to be sort of £160 for a full-size plot. Now, I can afford it, so I'm not overly fussed about the prices, and I completely agree with the logic that it basically costs every resident in our town £7 to maintain our allotments, which on one hand, I don't think it's fair that everybody that should pay for something that only a few can use. But then that goes on with a lot of the things the council does, the leisure centres, the arts and crafts, etc. This is a meeting that we're having, a talking point. It's going to be interesting. I always leave my dustman a 4-pack of Fosters for Christmas. Never a problem all year long. Indeed, yeah. Always that nice little gift for them around Christmas. Isn't that a lot of money, though? It is. It is a lot of money that they're increasing it by. Like I say, it won't be next year. No, it won't be 2023 or 20. It won't be. They won't start increasing it till 2025, basically, and then by 2030 it will be, 100% more than what it costs at the moment. It is a lot of money that they are increasing it, but at the same point, it's it's a lot. Oracle says 4-pack did well. If it wasn't a 12-pack and a bottle of vodka, the bin will walk on. Indeed, yeah. Did you just say that your allotment is going up to £100 per plot? It will be £100 in 2025, yes. At the moment, as I say, it's £80, and it eventually will be £160. I've got 2 half plots, to be fair, but they're 2 half plots of the same plot, so there would be 1 full plot. So yeah. Using that argument, why should non-drivers pay for the roads? A town should be a hashtag. I'm not sure what. Again, I do agree. It's one of these things that the part of me is sort of sitting there saying, why should people who don't use these things be paying for them? but then that can be used in every way. As I said, I don't use our local gym. Our council has to pay for that, but I do use our allotments. I suppose that might be where it balances out. Actually, I'm paying for things I don't use, but then other people are paying for things I do use. It could be that. Could be, yeah, yeah. Oracle says £24 a year, and the bill is due out soon. Um, well, yeah, that's cheap, isn't it? £24 a year. I never know what anybody is paying out there. Andrew says, sorry, the message got posted before I had finished it. No problem. Let me know what you were going to say. Just you've raised a very good point there. Leave that lot out and I'll come and do your piece. Yeah, indeed. Ian McCragan has joined. Hi all, Richard. I like your hoodie. I can recommend it. It's so warm and keep the wind out. Yeah, I've got to admit, I don't normally wear hoodies, but I've started wearing one out here as it's got cold, and it's nice and warm. Why should I pay taxes for schools? Exactly. This is where it can go on and on. Why should I pay for taxes for schools? I don't have kids. I could go on a huge list of things. Why should I pay? And it comes back round to this whole thing. Mine has gone up to £24 this October. £24. How lovely is that? My half plot was £35 this year, which I think is good value. That's about the same as what a half plot would be on my site. I think it personally is good value. But I think they worked out to maintain our allotments costs the council £90,000 a year. So, and the deficit is something like £75,000. So there's quite a bit of money being lost. I agree. My point was that a town should be seen as a community. One pays for a thing, one doesn't use, but for the sake of a community, we accept it. And I do agree. As a community, yes, we should be paying for things and so on. And that's the whole tax system. But on the other hand, should tax, when there's a deficit, this is getting very, very political. I probably shouldn't have approached this subject, but when there's a deficit and money has to be saved somewhere, is it right that important things should be cut or have less money, or should people be charged more, especially those? And where does it come in? It's a very difficult subject, as you can tell. It was a talking point. Yeah. Andrew says, I'd find out what the council does for that money. They did break it down. There's the admin side, there's the cutting of the hedges, the locks, the maintenance of the things, etc., etc. And Andrew says move to Croatia, which actually feels like a good time to share with you Andrew's video of his garden in Croatia. This is absolutely lovely.
And I'm filming this in a little village in Croatia. Behind me is my house, and next to me is Zoro. Zoro is our dog. So this is our house. We bought it about 17 or so years ago for a paltry sum of €15,500. I always grew up wanting to find a place in the country. And as much as I love England, and England was always my inspiration for painting particularly, there's nowhere in England where you could buy a house and a huge piece of land for such a small price. Where I'm walking now is through the orchard. We have plums, we have apples, which give fruit every couple of years. And from the plums we make brandy, and I distill it up at my neighbour's. And from the apples we make juice, particularly from this tree, apple tree up here. We call it the magic apple tree because it produces such wonderful fruit every 2 or 3 years, after which it needs a couple of years to rest. But this is our piece of land here. and my vegetable garden is down at the bottom. Now, my parents always instilled in me a love of gardening. My father was more interested in vegetables, my late father, and my mother, who's still alive, has the most wonderful garden. Very small, but she fills it with most wonderful, wonderful flowers. So this little path is the border of our land here. And we came here about, as I say, about 17 or so years ago. And after a couple of years, I realised how quickly the village was changing. So I started making documentary films about the village. And I recorded 78 videos detailing the traditions, the customs, the way of life of the people here, the things they grew, how they farmed, the cows that they milked, and ploughing the land, all kinds of things. And then that stopped when one of my dearest friends, who I filmed quite a lot, he died, as many people have died. But I've managed to record a lot of the way of life of these people before everything changed. And change started apparently around the 1970s, when people bought tractors and they sold off their oxen. But over the years I managed to film the last man who was still ploughing with horses. And sadly he died last year, so that tradition is gone. After I stopped filming the villages and their ways of life, after my friend died, I took a break for about a year. And then I decided to subject myself to the same treatment. And I turned the camera on myself and recorded 64 weekly videos of what we were doing to our land and on our fields and to the house, and how this landscape has inspired my paintings, my sculptures over the years. So it's a reasonable question to ask, how did I end up living in Croatia? Well, the truth is, at the beginning of 1992, when the war was going on, I saw an exhibition of destroyed cultural monuments. And I thought, I've got to come to this country and paint them, record them. So that's exactly what I did. And when I came here, I just fell in love with the country. It's quiet now. There is space, land is cheap, and it seemed like a place where I could fulfill my wishes. So after a few years, I was teaching myself the language while I was working in London. And I decided to give up my job and go to London University and study the language, literature and history. So that's what I did, and the day after my final exam, I came back to Croatia and decided to make a life here. But this area here, this fenced area, is our vegetable garden. We have to fence it because there are wild deer around. So we have this fence, and I've grown all kinds of things. At the moment there's only nasturtiums and zinnia flowers. But this place has been a tremendous inspiration, not just for filming the traditions and the customs here, but also for painting. I consider myself as a painter. And before I moved here, I was painting all over the Sussex, Surrey, Hampshire countryside. But I found here inspiration for painting. And there are two locations where I spent a lot of time recording and painting the scenes. I will show you them now. This wood is the first location that I chose as a subject for painting. This wonderful cast stone, moss covered with trees growing through them. And I had an exhibition nearly 3 years ago of the works that I produced. And I will now take you to my second location, which is the location I'm working on at the moment. We're now approaching the second location, which has been a theme for painting for about 18 months now. And it might not look much, but it's the last dew pond in the village. And this is where cattle used to come and graze. And so I've been painting it for, as I say, a year and a half and filming it. But when the people building the road here, they pushed the excess aggregate into the dew pond and covered up half of it. So earlier this year, I hired a JCB digger to scoop out as much of the stones, the aggregate, as they could in order to widen it. So it's been a wonderful subject for inspiration, and I love to focus on one subject, one piece of the land, and focus on that. And my goal is that to hear the sound of frogs croaking, that the frogs will be back one day soon, I'm sure, I hope. But it's the last dew pond left in the village, so I thought it was worth preserving as a piece of the village's cultural identity. So if it hadn't been for that exhibition I saw in London in 1992, I wouldn't have moved to Croatia. And if it hadn't been for my parents' love of nature and the countryside and gardening, I wouldn't be here gardening.
There we go. Sorry about that. I slightly got slow on the buttons there. What a lovely video. What a tremendous story going on there. And the price of land in Croatia is certainly cheaper than here in south coast of UK, Sussex. And Richard Golden, I saw this. Am I blocked due to adding a app? That's the first, apart from your first one at the beginning of the show. That's the only comment I've seen so far from you. So I don't know what's going on. Sometimes they may not always show up. I don't know. And right, maybe they would let individual allotment societies maintain their own sites. I know some councils have handed over maintenance to bowls and tennis clubs. I do agree. I think there are ways that money could be saved. And this is where I will be talking about when I go in on Tuesday to have this meeting. I mean, it's not just me; it's the entire council meeting. So yeah, I'm not going to read that one out. Sorry, there's some things that I might get flagged on for saying on network. So yeah. I wonder why the quality of the video is so poor. I sent it at 720p. That was played straight from your file, actually. So I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It seemed okay to me, though. I don't know if anybody else had trouble. Maybe a little bit of buffering from time to time, but nothing too difficult. Andrew's definitely living the dream in Croatia. Well done, that man. Indeed. Oracle says, if you're paying big money for an allotment, what's the point in having one? It would be cheap just to buy your stuff. I have a budget and we don't go over it. I agree. I do agree. But an allotment is a hobby. It's not, for me, it's not necessarily to save money. Although that is a side effect. I'm paying for a hobby. It's still cheaper than a gym memberships, is the way I look at it. So that's just my take on it. Ernie asked Andrew, homemade countryside juice, how potent are they? How lovely your mum is doing well. Sad news on the passing of a man that ploughed the land. And I did see Andrew came back and said 44% is how strong that juice was. Oh, that's a kick to that. Idaho says, sounds like a great place. Almost wish I could move there. It does sound like a great place. It absolutely does. The price of land is the thing as well. The price of the allotment never worries me. If something gives you so much pleasure, it's worth it. I do worry about things I waste money on that can't be done without. Yeah, I do agree with you there, Buddy Celine, actually. It's not so much the price. It gives me the pleasure. It's cheaper than the gym membership still. Yeah. Stu Jackson says, a great video. It looks like an amazing country. Digwell says, great video, great location, great life, jealous. Fantastic video, wonderful video from Idaho. Argrave Gas, it does look a great way to live out there, indeed. Andrew says, thank you. Oh, glad you liked that brief view of Croatia. Indeed, yeah. Ian says, lovely video, Andrew. I hope you get to hear the frogs in February, as that's when they mate. Indeed, yes. Lisa says, beautiful video. I would love all that land. It's beautiful. When we all love that land, I could spend a lot of time. And anybody wants to help me with my front garden, if I had that much land, I would be calling in for a lot of help. Turbo Steam. I will eventually get him fit round to filming my story, still coughing from the COVID. It'd be lovely if anybody can do more of their story videos, and so we can get to know the people behind the name as well. Always very, very welcome. Oh God! So I was going to sow some seeds this week, and we're going a little bit behind behind with the conversation with being so involved, which is great. So let me just set this camera up. So first of all, I'm going to bring these seeds over. So a few weeks ago, we sowed some spinach, and these are definitely ready for pricking out now. So I will be pricking those out this week. The aubergines we sold a couple of weeks ago haven't really done much yet, but last week we sowed these cabbages, and I can just see they're starting to spring into life. Rain is really kicking it down now. And then what I'm going to sow today, I've got another set of tray here, and I've got some pea seeds. I'm going to sow these peas actually is as pea shoots, so we could be eating these quite soon. If I can get the bag open, that is. He says, if you can get the bag open, you can't see what I'm doing here. Right. There we go. I'm going to sow these quite thickly in here, as you can see. Push them down. Completely cover them over. And then what I will do is cover those with a bit of compost a little bit later on, and we'll grow those as pea shoots. It's raining again out there, and I can hear water coming along somewhere, and I'm not sure where it is, because it should be flowing that way with the guttering. I'll have to check the guttering later. Stuart Jackson says, £100 a year for allotment, loads cheaper than the gym. I will be paying more than that for my gardening magazine before I joined the Supporters Club. Indeed, yeah. I still, I mean, I put myself in a position I'm lucky I can afford it, but then there's probably a lot of people that can't afford the huge change. So I am bearing that in mind, and I do think the trouble isn't so much the trouble I feel with the council is that they're wasting more money in some ways. Ian says, lots of land equates to lots of hard work maintaining the land. Indeed. Okay, you need to get an allotment, Stuart, and spread the wings. I think he's probably busy enough without an allotment, to be fair, with all the stalls and selling that he does. Anyway, so let's come back to what we've been discussing about this front garden. And I've got to say, you guys have given me so many ideas. I'm liking the raised beds in shapes to fit the areas that we need to grow in. I'm really liking that, and I'm thinking we could even put these raised beds on wheels to make them maneuverable in times that we need to. So really liking that. The espaliers and the cordians for fruit trees and things and fruit bushes. I'm liking that as well. Gooseberries, blueberries, Quince japonica got written down as another thing as well. I'm going to look into. Large half whiskey barrels is something else I like the idea of as well as the Corsican mint and the chamomile in the cracks and places like that as well. So what other ideas have I put down? A seat to sit in and talk to everyone, definitely, as well as bolting pots down so they can't be stolen. Lots of ideas you guys have given me. Something I'm going to go away and think about. It's been the research side of things, so really has been really great. It's not the end of the show, by the way. I'm just summarising quickly. I've still got the photos to do, which I'll do in just a moment. Andrew says to Ian, that is true, but I have a large wildflower meadow to reduce the work on all land. You know, I say that with a lot of things. If we take on an allotment, or anybody that first takes on an allotment, it's a lot of work, especially when you first get involved in it. And something like a wildflower meadow that makes it look like something is happening or something is happening before you tackle the rest of the land just makes it a little bit easier for everybody else to tackle the garden, to tackle the entire allotment and what have you. So yeah, wildflower meadows, there's a lot to be said for them. Um, let's have a look at the photos that have come in this week. So these have all been sent in by you. Now, Stephen, I haven't seen Stephen tonight, but he's harvested a couple of pumpkins. His first time managed to grow pumpkins. And he's used the smallest one, which he's told is the sweetest tasting, which I always agree with. The smaller ones tend to taste better. But he's turned it into pumpkin pie. It looks absolutely delicious, I've got to say. I might have to pop round for some of that. Erica has grown this pumpkin, which come from the Supporters Club seeds that were sent back in March, I think it was, maybe May. She's very happy with this pumpkin, as you can tell. A nice size as well. I think that's Rose de Vif and Tempest, if I remember correctly, as well. Chris has been freezing lots of tomatoes. A couple of weeks ago, he had tomatoes he was trying to ripen. They've ripened and he's frozen these down into his freezer. Richard Goldin, who is out there this evening as well, he's shared this photo from CD Sunday. Anybody who's local to Brighton, Sunday the 5th of February, CD Sunday, the largest seed swap in the UK and the oldest seed swap as well. I will definitely be going, unless I'm on call or something, but unlikely. But I will definitely go there, and if you are going, let me know, and we'll have a cup of coffee or something. Steve's got his supporter club seeds for this month as well. If anybody doesn't know about the supporters club, it's a club I run, charge £5 a month, and these are the seeds that we sent out this month. Kate has been very busy on our plot. I've got to say, it's looking absolutely beautiful from this photo alone. But what she's really been working hard on is moving these blackcurrant bushes. A lot of hard work I can see has gone into that, digging those out, moving them, and getting them ready to go. Philly has sent me a load of photos of their allotment, and they're getting it ready for the winter, covering over with lots of weed suppressor membrane. But he's still waiting for the asparagus to die down. It looks really good and healthy, I've got to say. Just goes to show how mild it has been this year. But he's also had a huge delivery of leaf on his allotment, and he's using it as a mulch on these beds, something that we've discussed quite a bit in the past. And this is all a leaf that was delivered to his allotment site. This is where we were talking about the council earlier. This is where we should be discussing that, or where councils could be saving some money. So keep those photos coming in, post them in our Facebook group. You can send them to me via social media, as it should be, or email me, richard@the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. And I look forward to seeing them and using them in each week. I think they're great photos, definitely some really fantastic photos going on. I may not use all the photos, but I certainly try and use the ones that I have talking points from. Just quickly, Oracle is saying we are the opposite, Stuart. We have more time for our allotment than our garden allotment first. Then our garden, the allotment comes first, is what he's saying. Indeed, yeah, I find that. I find my allotment comes first over my own garden here at home. But we are very lucky to have an allotment. I know, as Rebecca has said, she's fighting with the council to get an allotment. Fingers crossed it's going to work, and I've hopefully sent the information that I know about over to her to try and help. Dig well, no dig, so no real exercise. And Stuart Jackson said, I don't have the time for my own garden, let alone having an allotment. No dig is definitely the way to go, I say. Ballycillian says, don't forget to hit the like button, folks. Yes, I think I did ask. Do hit that like button. Do hit the thumbs up. Please do all that. Don't forget to follow and subscribe, and click the bell so you know when we go live. I know I have to say that, otherwise I get told off from YouTube or Facebook when I don't say it. I haven't not said it for a while, so perhaps that might be why I haven't heard from them. Ian says, my friend has fruit trees in the front garden. So I told him what he needs is a pick your own sign. Yeah, this is again something we were worried about is thefts and what have you. But with fruit trees in the front garden would be great, but I just the full size ones I don't think are quite gonna have enough space there. Oracle says, get your name down for one, Stuart. When we are all behind you, no dig will be okay. I know there's huge waiting lists for allotments at the moment, isn't there? Years and years I'm hearing. I mean, I don't know. I know we've got some empty plots on our allotment site, so there must be some out there that are just waiting for people to take them on. But I am hearing in the news articles that there is a long waiting lists for allotments at the moment. I think, to me, this just goes to show that there is demand for allotments, a lot of demand for allotments. I know this is slightly off topic. Well, it's not actually, because if you are on a waiting list for an allotment because you want to expand your growing space, you may have a garden. You've worked in the back garden. Look into the front garden. This is what I'm thinking is, or my current thinking is, that what can we grow in the front garden to try and grow more food, make more use of it. And the more I think on this, the more obvious and easier it becomes. I do want it to look good, of course. It's the front of our house. It needs to look in a decent shape. Potatoes in buckets was mentioned by Digwell, and at first I was not sure about it because I prefer potatoes in ground, but now I'm starting to come round to the idea and think actually they would do really well in the front garden as well. Digwell says plots seem easy to get in London at present. I thought there was huge waiting lists in London. I could be wrong, but I thought there was huge waiting lists. But it's a long way to travel though. So my first allotment, believe it or not, was in Brighton, and it took me an hour to travel there and back each week. So I had to make sure I spent the entire day there. And it was really annoying if you suddenly realized you needed carrots or something. We weren't in this house at that point. But if you needed carrots or something, an hour's travel wasn't worth it just to go harvest some carrots. That's one of the reasons that I'm glad when I moved to this house, I got a more local allotment site. Travel definitely does have a bit of a problem, I feel, certainly from my experience with it. But it is an option if you are struggling for growing space and you can only get offered an allotment far away. I know a lot of people are talking about buddy schemes and helping others on their allotments, which I think is a good idea. Now, Digwell actually says, I'm giving up one plot so I can do more on the other. Yeah, I partly that's why I had to give up the one I had in Brighton. I got the one in here and wanted to spend more time on this plot as opposed to the one in Brighton, and I had to give it up. And it does make a lot of sense. I know both of your plots are on different sites, so there's traveling involved, which does really ruin it, I feel. Stuart Jackson, my garden is 30 by 15 meters, plus the front garden is 8 by 8, plus all the growing I do for the sales. If I had an allotment, I would have no time for work. I don't see that as a bad thing. But there again, you are growing at school, you are growing at work, so we bear that in mind, everyone. Everyone, bear that in mind that Stuart is gardening all day long at work, when he gets home, and at the weekends as well. So he is doing a lot of gardening even without an allotment. We've got about 7 minutes to go. So phone line is open. So I did close that off while we were showing Andrew's video. The phone line is open. It's 07307 135 174. If you do want to call in, phone is on, although it doesn't always work, as we know. So something I had the thinking about with this front garden was I mentioned earlier about Steve's Seaside Life using galvanized bins to grow trees in to stop them getting stolen. And I looked into it and I thought it's a great idea, but those bins are quite expensive, and that sort of popped me off a little, and which is why I haven't done it so much. But anybody else used anything a bit unusual in their front garden to grow stuff in? Oracle says to sub-rent it to Stuart Digwell. Yeah, he's not that far away. Rebecca says, sounds like my heaven, Stuart. Yes, the size of his garden. It is a nice sized garden. Really do. Next year, I really do want to come around, everybody, and see their gardens and their allotments. We spoke of doing a bit more this year, it just hasn't happened. But I do want to come and see everybody's gardens and allotments a bit more in 2023. Do some podcasts, may even be able to do some live shows from your allotment or garden if that is of interest to you as well. I think that'd be a good idea for 2023. Oh, right. Next week, what we're going to be discussing next week. So next week, temperatures are dropping. And what I want to know is, if you have a greenhouse, what are you doing to protect your plants inside the greenhouse? Are you using bubble wrap? Are you using heaters? What type of heaters are you using? And so on and so on. Want to get your thinking caps on, send your fit pictures, send your videos of what you do with your greenhouse. Ian says, what about old oil drums and no handles to pinch them? That could work. That could work. They just have to look pretty nice. I've just remembered I've got an old beer keg I could do something with as well. That'll look pretty cool, I think. Chilly Phil, our neighbour is growing in an old boat in his front garden. Oh, fantastic. That is a fantastic idea. I helped a friend when I was a child. We had, late teenager, had to go and get a boat and grow in that as well. Great idea. How about those awful blue barrels, Richard? They'd really set your front garden off. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Blue barrels. Get it? It's just about it looking. I feel the front garden just needs to look really respectable and nice because everybody sees it, don't they? Stuart Jackson, I've grown in old drum kits. Great for potatoes. Drum kits. That's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea as well. Rebecca, I use bins. I was lucky enough to have given to me. To save compost, I've half filled them with polystyrene and top up with compost. They look great. That's the trick that they do on TV, isn't it? They fill it up with polystyrene and just put compost on the top, especially the Ideal Home Show and things like that, or QVC. One of the tricks they do is fill it with polystyrene, then put the compost on top, so it's easy to maneuver, as well as doesn't use up a lot of compost. Stuart Jackson says, great subject for next week. I will send some photos of my greenhouse as it's all ready for winter. Yeah, you guess what I'm talking about. It's what I want to find out. And Turbo Stream, old tires. Old tires could work, but again, they need to look the part. They need to look presentable. Not so much for me because I don't care, but it's my neighbours. It needs to look presentable so that my neighbours don't turn around and say, oh my God, what's that? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Digwell says to Turbo Stream, inside out compost bags. Has Turbo Stream said something that I can't see? I can't see anything from Turbo Stream. Oh, he said old tyres, of course. Of course. Idaho, I wonder if stainless steel clothes washing machine tubs would be nice enough. I've used those before, actually. I have used old washing tubs. That could be an idea. Could be an idea. Trying to think where mine are. I tried making a trommel out of it to sieve through my soil. Didn't quite work, unfortunately, because it was 2020 when nothing was open. Right, guys, I think we are coming to the end of this week's live show. It's been a really good conversation again. And I'd like to thank you all once again for joining me, for sharing your ideas and your tips and tricks, and for really, really getting stuck in as well. Turbo Streamers just said an old toilet would be perfect. Or AirPods look quite good, but will cost you. Again, I don't mind so much about the cost. And Ian says peas growing out of a toilet. Indeed. Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this up anyway. This has been a really good conversation. I want to thank you all for sharing your ideas with me and getting my brain flowing. Rebecca has said, lovely chat. Please keep us updated with your plans. I certainly will. I'll draw some out, and I will come up with a few good ideas based on what we've been saying. But first of all, I've got to remove all those privet bushes out as a first port of call. Anyway, let me set myself up ready to go. So next Sunday, your greenhouses, how you keep them going throughout the winter. On the podcast tomorrow, we're talking about crop rotation. So until then, until the podcast, until the live show, couple of videos coming out this week as well. So keep your eyes out for those. But I look forward, as always, to seeing you next Sunday on the live show. You take care, guys. See you again next time. Oh no, wrong one.